You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the political commentator, Benedict Spence, and the broadcaster, Joanna Jarjue. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Sunday Mirror's leading on the post office scandal with an exclusive claiming bosses were filmed at enjoying a lavish company bash as it fought wrongly jailed sub-postmasters in court. HS2 back on track, reports the Sunday Express, with an exclusive on secret government talks to get the scrapped high-speed rail project on the agenda again. The legacy of vaccination scares, reads the Sunday Times, revealing a third of under-16s are at risk of measles. The Mail on Sunday reads, Hunt tax cuts will spark new Lawson boom, reporting on the Chancellor's vow to emulate former Chancellor Nigel Lawson. The Sunday Telegraph is reporting on a government crackdown on activists in the civil service amid concerns over officials using their jobs as a vehicle for political activism. The Observer is leading with calls from London Mayor Sadiq Khan for young people to be able to move freely to and from the EU. The Sunday People leads on a get well message from Prince Harry to the King and the Princess of Wales. Big hairy caterpillar tried to kill me. The Daily Star's leading with actor Jamie Dornan suffering a suspected heart attack after being stung by a giant caterpillar while on a trip to Portugal. And The Sun on Sunday, Paddy to face pitbull divorce lawyer. We have a feature on the split between Christine and Paddy McGuinness. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Benedict Spence and Joanna Jarjue. Welcome to you both. Let's start with the Observer, Benedict, if you take us into this story. It's utterings from the London Mayor Sadiq Khan suggesting that young people should be able to move freely within the EU. It is.
Just when you think you're safe to go back into the post-Brexit waters, up it pops again and rears its head. We can never quite escape from it. This is Sadiq Khan. I suspect that this is his first sort of, along with the announcement that they were going to freeze fares on the tube, I think that this is the beginnings of his manoeuvres ahead of the London mayoral elections later this year. In May, it's not that far away, he's saying that he wants a bespoke deal with EU countries for young people in the UK and from Europe to be able to travel and work between the two to make things easier. Undoubtedly, this will go down very well with young people, especially young people in London and young European citizens who have remained in London. So you can understand why this would be particularly good to boosting his chances of becoming London Mayor again. Not that I think anybody doubts that he's likely to be re-elected. It's curious, though, of course, because that has not been the line of the Labour Party up until now. You know, they've trodden a very careful line, because as much as we are very much aware that they are riding very high in the polls and doing very well, there will be caution in the Labour higher-ups, among the Labour higher-ups, that Boris Johnson was able to win his stonking great majority by taking away pro-Brexit but traditional Labour seats. Those we anticipate are going to go back to the Labour Party come the next general election, but could there be a little hint of concern that maybe Sadiq Khan is overstepping the mark? Now, the Observer says that this Sadiq Khan's team say that they ran this by the Labour leadership, that there was no pushback. But I do wonder if Sir Keir Starmer might be quite as bold come the general election with such a suggestion. I think it's also rather curious, given the generally bad time that a lot of people have, especially in London, what might happen to London's workforce if we have such a magnificent scheme where we can all flee the country a lot more easily and go to places that are slightly easier to live. Perhaps that we might end up with a bit of a workforce crisis. But anyway, we wait and see.
Well, the Mayor's saying he's not advocating rejoining the EU, just a more pragmatic debate, Joanna.
Yes, and they're also saying that Keir Starmer's been reluctant as well to criticise this, I guess out of fear of offending people who were Remainers. I think that this is good from the Labour Party. We know that Labour tends to be quite strong in London. And I think for people like me, you know, remembering the fact that the majority of my generation didn't actually vote for Brexit, and I think that those people now are coming of age and they're probably becoming more and more critical and working in the city and wanting wanting to see, you know, some form of opposition and some form of, I guess, revisiting some questions and opportunities that we could potentially have in Europe. I think when people look at this, potentially they might think, you know, that this would probably be geared more towards the professionals and, you know, the people in the swanky jobs in the city. But I think some of the criticisms maybe that might come of this might be, well, if there's young people from Europe that are coming and doing maybe the unskilled jobs that some of the Brexiteers were complaining about, then that might cause a bit of an issue.
But certainly we can read into this that Mayor Khan sees this as a vote winner, as it were, something that would be very popular, as you say, with the young people. Let's move on to the Express. And, yeah, Brexit's back and HS2 could be back also. This is an exclusive, I think, yes, an exclusive from the Express, that they are now talking with all those mayors who were hopping mad at it being cancelled, but it's now back on track, possibly.
Yes, so this is a cross-party plan that's been drawn up to complete the northern stretches. I'm quite invested in this as a northerner. When I heard back in 2021 that the Leeds leg had been cancelled, it was something that I was really looking forward to as somebody who commutes into London to do work like this. And I think that this is a good idea because I think for a lot of the time, the North, you know, tend to feel like they kind of second-class citizens to London, and I think that HS2 being cancelled on those two legs, you know, going from Birmingham to Manchester and also to Leeds, was a bit of a kick in the teeth, really, especially for the people in red wall seats, you know, after the whole Conservative agenda of levelling up. We really expected more from this, and I think the key thing actually here is that they're saying that this massive bill would be funded privately rather than not by taxpayers, and after the massive cost that we've had, costing already £57 billion, obviously criticism has been wild when it comes to HS2, but overall I think that it would be reassuring to get some sort of agreement that would at least kind of soften the blow in terms of the costs, but then also remembers the North.
Benedict, do you think this is a realistic prospect? I mean, it would be a huge U-turn, wouldn't it?
It would be a huge... I mean, I was going to say, can something be back? Can a train be back if it's not yet left the station? I don't know. It does seem to have managed it. It's rather impressive. It's an opportunity, I think, for local government to really prove their worth. You know, across the last year or so, actually, a lot of stories that you've had about local authorities have actually been rather negative. Various cities going into administration, central government having to come in and take over, for example, in Liverpool, sort of having to take over the running of various aspects of the... So they've not had a great time of it. If they were able to... You know, you've got these two mayors here, Andy Burnham, who is the mayor of Greater Manchester, and Andy Street, who is, I believe, the Midlands. If they are able to, as you say, a sort of a cross-party, come together and say, actually, at a local level, we can get something that central government has effectively given up on. It does wonders, I think, to restore the faith in localised governments to get things done. Also, though, it must be said, you know, Andy Burnham has had designs on, you know, higher office for some time. It would also perhaps, especially when other Labour politicians are doing rather well, put his name back into the arena, back into the public sphere and say, well, I can also get things done too. Don't forget about me. I'm doing good things up here in Manchester.
Yeah. Not sure that is his motivation, though.
I think that has always been his motivation.
Really?
I think he looked at what it did for Sadiq Khan in terms of boosting his profile as Mayor of London when nobody expected him to rise any higher, and I think that was his key motivation for becoming the Mayor of Greater Manchester. Rather than the Mayor of Merseyside, for instance, would have made a lot more sense, given that he is from Liverpool, he's a Liverpool MP. I think that's always been his dream.
As somebody from Leeds, I kind of wish that, you know, in my neck of the woods, we kind of had somebody that was like Andy Burnham, that, you know, really advocated for us in this sense. And if he can pull this off, I think that the whole of the North will see him as a king.
Or Andy Street. Presumably.
Yes.
let's give the Conservative one some credit as well. He is at the table.
Let's move to the Mirror and their front page story. Post chiefs partied as they fought victims. This is more info regarding the post office scandal, and it's images from a party that was held with Paul and Venables there dancing along to Pixie Lot as they fought those victims in court, as we now know. Yeah,
the Mirror story doesn't give us, certainly the front page, it doesn't give us a lot of context as to when this party was happening, but I just sort of assume given the timeline that's involved here, any kind of partying at any stage when postmasters and sub-postmasters were being put through the ringer isn't going to be a particularly good thing. And I think it's just... ultimately, the story doesn't get any better for any of the higher-ups involved. The more that we find out, the more that we found out that there was more interest in, if you like, sort of covering backs rather than actually uncovering the truth. I think it just adds insult to injury, and the longer that it drags on without compensation for those involved, I think it's just, added strain to people who have been put through rather a lot.
I mean, I think you've been quite generous to them, to be honest. I think that in terms of what was going on at the time, yes, there might be something like a Christmas party, and that's kind of avoidable, and it could have been, throughout the whole timeline of this, which we know went on for years and years and years. So I guess it couldn't have been avoided. But I think just some of the behaviour that we've seen while this was going on shows that some of these these chiefs at the post office weren't, empathetic when it comes to the victims of this crime. And I just, for the public, I think, reading this, I think that the newspapers are going to take this and run with it. Any kind of recording, anybody, enjoying themselves, anybody who maybe would have got some sort of bonus or benefit from being in this role, I think will be splashed across the newspapers, because the entire country is being absolutely appalled at this. And it's something that really kind of invokes emotion in people. So more stories like this, I think, to come for sure.
Benedict, what's your view? Do you think a headline like this, and as you say, we don't know the full context, do you think it's petty, or do you think it is information that the public needs to know?
I think, there is an aspect of pettiness if they don't tell us what the occasion was. If it is a Christmas party or something like that, well, you kind of think, well, they're not going to cancel their Christmas party if they are, claiming that they've done nothing wrong. That would be ludicrous. But ultimately, I think it also raises the spectre of, for example, the partying in Number 10 during lockdown. I think it's just another example of, throughout the last few years, there have been too many examples of large corporations, elements of the state, not doing the right thing, and there being this almost sort of blasé attitude from the people at the very top, who may well say that, well, they didn't know that this, X, Y, Z was going on, but people would, I think, justifiably answer, well, why didn't you know? If that's actually your claim, you are the person with which the buck stops. So, again, I would like to see more information on what, we assume that they're not partying and dancing at the expense of these people, but nonetheless, it's not brilliant, is it, given everything else that we've found out in the last few
But also, you kind of get the impression that they almost believed in their own narrative, and they almost kind of stuck together on this agenda that these people, even though they were fighting for justice, that, the post office were on the right side of history. And I think the partying was almost, I see it as a bit of an elitist thing with this whole story, in the sense that it's almost as if we're this big organisation, we've got these big lawyers and this kind of government backing, we can carry on going on as with our lives as normal, while you guys are fighting for justice. And it just kind of shows the protection that the post office had compared to the average Joe fighting against this.
As Benedict says, we don't have all the detail. It's probably unfair to say partying. This is just one corporate
solitary karaoke.
Yes, so we need to find a bit more about that. We're going to take a break, Joanna and Benedict. Thank you very much for the moment. When we come back, we'll be discussing the front of the Telegraph. The government says it'll crack down on civil servants accused of wasting taxpayers' money on diversity activism. Stay with us for more on that. Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, the political commentator Benedict Spence and the broadcaster Joanna Jarjue. Let's have a look at the Telegraph in this section, their front page, and this story about a crackdown on activists in the civil service, being championed by John Glenn, the Cabinet Office Minister. And this under plans discussed with Kemi Badenoch, the Equalities Minister, and Esther McVey, the Minister for Common Sense. Diversity meetings would have to be held before work, during lunch breaks or in the evenings. What's happening here, Benedict?
It's one of those sort of very typical stories where we're talking about, predominantly, I think it's focused around a little bit of culture wars and a little bit of economics. It's about government waste. Are we spending money on these schemes? Are we doing this sort of during work hours? Is that taking away from the service? And at the same time also saying voters don't like this. They don't want this sort of thing to be going on. And that's, I don't know, any sort of scheme, depending on whatever cause it is, be it to do with racism, be it to do with privilege, be it to do with, I don't know, you could sort of name name something, and I'm sure that the government would find a way of saying, well, this isn't acceptable. And I suppose actually to say, if there are things going on, meetings, schemes during workplace hours, I think that's perfectly justified. Actually, I think fundamentally what the taxpayer wants, what people want, is for their services to be run efficiently. And you can say, well, yes, there is some justification in, I don't know, an awareness course on racism, but how does that actually impact your ability to deliver passports on time? I think that that's the sort of fair thing that people would expect to hear. However, the scepticism always comes in with this, which is, well, why are we talking about this now, given that the government has been the government for 14 years now. I can almost say 13 years, but it has been 14 years. All of this has been going on their watch, and they have been more than happy to sort of allow it up until we get to an election year, and they are sort of desperately scrabbling around for things to create wedges to separate themselves from the Labour Party. And I think a lot of Conservative voters or people who aren't particularly on board with this sort of thing would say, well, yes, we love efficiency. We really like, value for money. Where was this for the last 13 years, during which you've been talking at length about civil service reform and government waste? Why is it only now that we're getting this sort of dumped on our laps with, 9-10 months until the election? I wonder.
Joanna, what is happening here? Is it part of the culture wars, as Benedict's suggesting?
Yes, I was just about to say I've got the answer to that. I think that the Conservative Party at the moment are very scared of the Reform Party. And like Benedict was saying about, us edging nearer and nearer to a general election, you can see that a lot of their agenda is trying to, I guess, conform and pander to, I think, more of the right side of the party. And, you've got things like the war on woke and having a Minister for Common Sense. I think that usually when they have these type of conversations, it's usually an attack on anything that's liberal. And it's a shame, actually, that we're seeing this from something that's, so central to the UK and to our government. I think the civil service should be setting an example to all other organisations in the UK. So to say that you're kind of cracking down on something that's as important as diversity and inclusion, what does that say to the rest of the country? And I think that the government, kind of pulls out these things, whether it's a soundbite or whether it's this supposed crackdown to pander to those people who are at the right of the party. If it's not Rwanda, then it's something on diversity, on inclusion, or it's something about being woke. I kind of feel for the civil servants, actually, that are in there. I think that it's almost as if I understand that, they should be independent in the way that they work, but it's almost as if you work for the civil service, then your hands are tied behind your back and you can't kind of have any type of opinion on anything or act in a certain way when it comes to any political, things that you want to kind of relay.
Well, they're supposed to be impartial, but Mrs. Glenn is saying that the public expect the core mission of the civil service to be delivering the government's agenda and public services rather than working on internal projects related to equality, diversity and inclusion. Let's move to the Times and this story, which is quite interesting, regarding head teacher Catherine Burble-Singh and her school in northwest London in Wembley. Their decision to be a secular school and not to have prayers or any introduction of prayer within the school day.
I think, in some ways it's a rather sad story, because the incredible success, academic success, that this school has had, taking people from, we like to say, a cross-section of society. Actually, it is predominantly people from very deprived backgrounds, from what I can tell. A mix of backgrounds in terms of ethnicity or religion, but it's worked wonders. It's done wonders in terms of turning people from whatever catchment area it might be into very productive, very academically successful. And there didn't used to be a prayer ban at this school. This is where the issue has come, because of a group of pupils that decided that they wanted to pray. There was no issue with that. But then pressure was applied on the school for them to have a prayer room, and it started to become a very divisive issue. And since then, and this is where it gets rather difficult, because we can have these conversations in a perfectly tolerant and peaceful way, it is the fact that there have been teachers who have received death threats, there have been bomb threats made, people have had bricks thrown through their windows, and the staff themselves are being intimidated, at which point you do have to say, I think it's totally justified, well, if one group is going to act up, and they do not speak for all of the people who represent one religion, but if one particular group is going to act up within the school, if you're going to be fair about this, you cannot pander to that one group. You have to say, sadly, you're losing your privileges for everybody. And I think that this is perfectly justified. One of the things that has got this school the fantastic results that it does is discipline, actually. And I know that that can be very unfashionable in some circumstances, but a lot of the alumni of this school themselves say, actually, that discipline is what allows you to flourish in the classroom. So, you know, as I say, very sad that it's come to the point now where they are being taken to court by pupils over this. But I don't really see what the alternative is. You can't give in to people who's, you know, we don't know who it is that's doing the intimidating. It's very important to say we don't know who, but that there is intimidation happening at all. You can't give in to that sort of thing, especially when it comes to education.
Well, the head is saying that, you know, her rules promote social harmony, and that's the best way that pupils work, the best environment that they work in. Yes,
and I mean, I think that in terms of just having discipline, I think that that's something that the school has been able to, you know, thrive on, and I think that that's something completely separate from having things like a prayer room. You know, that comes as something that's outside of anything that's to do with academic achievement. It's something that, you know, is part of the school's actual experience for pupils. And I think that, you know, as a school leader, she should be somebody who recognises that part of the pupils' progress and part of their achievement within the school is
Joanna,
also...
we've run out of time. Thank you very much for your thoughts.